So, wondering if we're live now. Well, we did get the live notification, so welcome everyone. This is Church of Mabus Radio. As you can tell, I'm not Jeffrey Pritchett. Jeff is having some hardware difficulty right now, and so we're gonna go ahead. I'm Jerry Avalos, and today we have a great guest. We have Aage Nost, and quite a legend, really, and you can say at this point in terms of metaphysics, paranormal realm, all these things like this, and not to mention comes from a very highly technical background too, which I think is part of what's had your luster over the years, just retain its shine, so to speak. And we plan on getting into all kinds of fun topics today, and really anywhere you really want to take it to today, Aage, because there's so much knowledge I'm sure you have waiting for us, and there's a lot of things that the audience at large I'm sure is unaware of, because as I'm sure you know, there's been so many more new people introducing themselves to some of the narrative that goes beyond the major media story, shall we say. So I mean, rather than go too much into your extensive background, I think it would be good just to go ahead and give yourself a quick introduction of what you're doing these days, and and what what's going on.
Oh boy, I don't really know where to start. I think I want to start back in Europe because I'm an import to the United States. I was born and raised in Northern Europe, in Norway, on a farm back there. And, you know anything about the European traditions, if you were born on a farm and the oldest son, you're going to be a farmer. There's nothing about it. And of course I was, but that wasn't my dream. So I started thinking about other things. And at the age of 25, we sold everything and I left and went to the United States to become a pilot. Went to flight school for a year and got all my certificates and ratings, and became a flight instructor. And I worked for other people for 3 years to get more experience, and started a flight school of our own, me and a partner, that grew into a flight school, international air taxi, and an air carrier. And I flew for a living for 23 years, but it's the same old thing. If you do too much of something, it doesn't matter if you own the company, you burn out. And I burned out. I started doing other things, investigating the mind, got into UFOs again, which I did back in Europe, and started investigating that. And I had an incredible experience for 1 year when I was traveling the country teaching a mind development course called Zox Pro, where we taught people how to assimilate information out of a book at the rate of 50 to 100,000 words a minute with 95% retention. And this is very possible, actually. And the course is still in operation 25 years or 30 years later. So, but I am doing radio. I got me and a partner, Nori Love. We have a radio show that we have so much fun with that it's probably illegal.
That's great. And yeah, look into his show, please, everyone in the audience, because there's a lot of knowledge that has gone in, a lot of extensive research, and there's a lot of questions I want to ask you just from the point of your expertise, and like how we can just jump right into it in that sense, because we were talking a little bit backstage before everything started about social events and the orchestration at large. And so this is one of the things I always wanted to ask a very highly skilled pilot, like how likely is it in the case of like 9/11 that these students could have really done these maneuvers to slam into those buildings? Like you as an instructor, because I think that those who've seen your bio, you have, was it 1,000 hours upside down even, or something like that, in terms of...
Yeah, I used to teach aerobatics, and that was a lot of fun, actually. And when you talk about people that has only flown a single engine airplane at 120 miles an hour, the fastest they could go, put them in an airliner and get down to the ground and fly into, let's say, the Pentagon or some other building, that is just as believable as my name is Cleopatra. It ranks right up there.
Mm-hmm.
It just couldn't happen. There is
Okay.
no way that pilot in the cockpit would get the plane that close to the ground and hit right at the floor of the Pentagon. That could not have happened, because there are several things that indicate that it couldn't. One of them is ground effect. For one thing, he couldn't get that close to the ground even if he forced it down, because there's air between the airplane and the ground. And no, that was a rocket.
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem to be a cruise missile or something like that.
Yep.
And yeah, and this is one of the things too, getting into like how in a sense, would you say that there are certain patterns that these controlling groups employ in these? I mean, I know you've been at this game quite a bit, so I'm sure you've seen a lot of the same stuff come up over and over in terms of themes. So is there some cues you would say or that exist to kind of let us know that, hey, these guys are probably orchestrating this?
Yeah, I'm not so sure I totally understood the question, but there is some controversy around this, whether there was airplanes at all that hit the two towers. Because there is videos of showing that the airplane flew through the corner of the building and the wings show up on the outside and then suddenly disappears. It couldn't do that without it being a hologram. So I am still on the fence of that, because they could now, some of those hypersonic rockets, which we know we have now, we had them back then, that just didn't tell us about it. The hypersonic rockets could go so fast you wouldn't be able to see them. In fact, I've seen a video of this, that there was one place, there was a long streak of a shadow in the middle of a picture, and then it was gone. So it indicates something was there. Whether it was a UFO or it was a hypersonic rocket, I don't know. But something hit the building, of course, because it blew up, and then a little later it collapsed from all the explosions inside. So
Yeah.
I'm not the one to really talk about that, because I'm not an engineer, but there is hundreds of engineers around the world that has come out and said this couldn't have happened according to the official story.
Yeah, definitely. And from that pilot's point of view, I think that's crucial, because I think there's so many people that overlook that. It's they think, oh, well, they took a class, they should be able to do this. But here you are, you have a very distinguished line of expertise regarding the planes, and so I thought that would just be kind of interesting to hear from an expert actually directly. And yeah, I get you on the structural part, because I think a lot of us obviously haven't been trained in structural engineering and all these other things, but we have seen video, the difference between what a building looks like when it blows up versus when it's imploded, and so and those things. But that was just kind of a fun little offshoot, we can say, in terms of just the opportunity there. But one of the things I'm really curious about is your the mind development courses, and how you're mentioning about being able to read the books at, was it 50,000 words a minute? Is that what it was? Or
yeah, that's the common term for it, but it really isn't reading anymore. When you assimilate the information out of the book at 50 to 100,000 words a minute, you don't have time to read. You just turn the page. Turn 2 pages per second. So what you do, you take a mental picture of the 2 pages in front of you, and that bypasses the conscious mind indirectly to the subconscious mind and get lodged as long-term memory. And the way we bypass the conscious mind is by setting ourselves in a relaxed state of mind at the bottom of the alpha range, or possibly below, where we have really no thoughts that obstructs the flow of information from the page through the eyes, through the sight center, and into the brain to be recorded. So then when it is recorded in long-term memory, we later on go just like normal long-term memory. We ask a question. What did so-and-so do in this situation? And then we are able, through those triggers, to bring it back out. So the science behind it is simple. It's just not that simple to learn. It may have to take you 30 days of practice. Because think of it. how long did it take you to learn read in the first place? You didn't start on a Tuesday, you had it all figured out Wednesday night.
Yeah.
This takes a little while to learn, but once you learn it, you can amazing thing. That year I traveled around the country doing this. I read, so to speak, over 1,000 books.
Wow.
I went to the library when I got into a town, went to the library, got a stack of books, put them on the table and sat there and turned pages.
Mhm.
And people didn't really understand what I was doing. So once in a while I was asked, and I told them I'm just reading a book. They stood there and looked at me for a while, their eyes glazed over, and they walked off usually. So, but that's okay. They didn't understand because this science, the establishment is scared shitless of it.
Mhm.
Because think of it. If you start doing this with kids, at the age of 7 or so, you would have PhD by the time you're 13. You have another PhD by the time you're 14. You will have several professional, educational PhD by the time you're 21 to enter the work life. What in the world do you need teachers for? That's holding us back.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is when you want to look into this, go to zoxpro.com and you will see some really amazing things there.
Very cool. Very cool. And what was the inspiration for the system? Like when did you develop it? What sparked it all?
Well, I did not develop it. There was a guy, Richard Welsh is the guy that he found the method. He developed it. And that was back in the 1980s. And we met because we both lived in Omaha at the time. And we met there and we kind of hit it off. I was doing hypnosis and other things, and he was doing this. And we was kind of in parallel lanes going into the future, actually developing the mind to do certain things that other people would think would be impossible. So we kind of joined forces. And in fact, for people that really want to learn how to develop their mind to do things like they normally would be thought of as being impossible, I wrote a book on this. I explained it very well in here. And I have no shame. I'll show it off.
Yeah, definitely.
Spiritual science, higher conscious thinking, and how to access the universal consciousness. And this is something that it's very possible for everybody to do. And there are other things involving all the way up to photographic memory and astral travel. And there's many other things I show people how to do in there. And also explaining the universe, what it is, how it works, what we are, who we are. And that gets really deep into it because very few people really know what they are. They may have an idea of who they are, but what we are, that's more of an enigma hanging up there somewhere in space to be grabbed onto later.
Definitely.
Hey guys,
Okay,
can you hear me right now? You can hear me
we got
okay?
you. Yes.
Yes, you are.
I updated my headset earlier today, and apparently they don't work anymore. So I had to dig up an old headset. So here we are, and it's good to be here. My blood pressure just went up a lot. There's nothing like freaking out before a show. That'll give you a good adrenaline rush, no doubt about it.
I know the feeling.
So I have it anyway. So it's like times 100. But I guess one of my questions for you would be, do you think this is a simulation? Like you hear everybody saying they think we're in a simulation, like a computer, and that there's computer code. I think I've heard you say that too, that there's a code. And I mean, if so, I just want to know a little bit, do you think we are in a simulation? Who made the simulation is the question.
Now, that's a really good one. If you will allow me about 3 to 4 minutes on this one, I will put it into a term that everybody can understand. Did you guys see the Matrix movies?
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you, whoever wrote the script to that one, they knew something. And I'm going to make a statement. we live in a mind-created, holographically generated, and self-aware universe. Boy, that was a mouthful. I'm going to say that again. A mind-created, holographically generated, self-aware universe. And there is some science behind this. Otherwise, I would probably be laughed out of town. But there actually is some science behind this, because there is a physicist. His name is James Gates. He has spent his whole life investigating the universe on the blackboard that is 20 foot wide and 10 foot tall and is full of writing. That's the universe on the blackboard. And he says that when we go deep in the equations explaining the fabric of space, we find computer language. And we did not place it there. It just shows up. And it is too much of a rhythmic and symmetrical creation. It could not have happened by accident. He says there is an intelligence behind the creation of those ones and zeros, explaining the fabric of space. So now we have ones and zeros. That means that it is a computer program. And on top of that, somebody or something is sitting at the computer. And I'm really interested who that guy is.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's Cain the Conqueror. I'm kidding. Loki joke.
Yeah.
On the show.
And
but yeah.
The question is like when I grew up, we were told that there was this guy. He had long white beard, long white hair, probably a mustache, and he was sitting out there in space. They called it heaven, or in the clouds. He knew everything, controlled everything, and he had set down 10 rules for you. And if you violated one of those rules, he was going to send you to hell, where you will burn forever. But he loves you. Now, that made a lot of sense to me. So I left that church pretty as soon as I could, because I knew that was made on hot air. Now, that doesn't necessarily take anything away from spirituality. It was just that organized, mind-controlling church that had the problem. But on the other hand, when we start looking into these equations, we find more things. And that is that if we say a holographically generated existence, I have no problem with that, because we had holographic images here since the early 1960s. In fact, the first major holographic display was done by the American government over the harbor in Havana, Cuba, in the early 1963. They put an image of Maria Magdalene over the harbor. So hoping that everybody, and there, of course, are Catholics, so they're hoping that they would see Mary Magdalene and they would turn up and rise against the government and overthrow them. Well, of course, that didn't happen. They were all wimps down there, so they didn't do anything. But that was a holographic image. Now, 60 years later, we have holographic images that can think and they can act on their own. If you see our existence here in the physical, we claim, or somebody that think they know, they say that we have been in a physical existence that's been around for 14 billion years. 60 years of holographic development have brought us to where we are, where we can actually have holograms that think on their own. If you had one that started 14 billion years ago and developed it to now, I think that should be a little more advanced. So yeah, I have no problem with the fact that we are in a holographic situation created by somewhat of a computer that is explained the the images are explained through ones and zeros as a computer program. I have no problem with that at all. DNA has computer language in it. So why should we not have the same?
Are we prisoners?
There are some people that think so, but I don't believe that, because there is a form of free will. Now, the thing about it, quantum mechanics says that in the macro world where we live, there is no randomness. With other words, there is no free will. In the micro world outside of the physical, in the quantum existence, there is randomness. We can choose. So whatever happens here, let's say that we have something going on that we don't like. We can change our mind. But it is not done in the physical world. Our mind steps outside of the physical, changes the program that we have created in our mind to be executed in the physical, and then it comes back into the physical and changes that previous program. Because there is more than one timeline also going into the future. Now we're getting really into the depth here. But
I just wanted to say, I'm someone that when I was 17, I had testicular cancer, and I went through chemo. I'm fine now. I'm 46. That was when I was 17. But after that, my father passed away, and I started to have events happen to me of paranormal type and spiritual experiences. A lot of those were UFO related. I would see strange things over my home with witnesses, and also I saw beings of light with my physical eyes, and I would see those energy beings completely sober, and I thought I was dying for a while or transitioning. Maybe that's why I was seeing them. It's been a while since I've seen them. But one thing that happened, and this kind of ties into the Matrix thing, is there's the Agent Smiths. Well, during that time in Georgia when I lived there, these UFOs were appearing, and friends go, Jeffrey, they're attracted because you're here. And I don't know if that was true or if they were just there or what. But a military vehicle, I don't know if it was the military, I don't know what it was, but a craft that was like a silent helicopter came out over my house, and there was a man in the cockpit, and he waved mockingly, and it shot off, and it was like they were sent out because those UFOs were out there. Now, Jerry's had weird stuff happen that's crazier than my stuff with the government, my labs, and weird stuff like that. But that's my point. It seems like there may be forces here that don't like us to exceed our bounds, so to speak, or to reach certain states of attainment of enlightenment or consciousness. And kind of like Agent Smith, they come out and say, hey, like they never came to me face to face or anything like that. But I did see weird stuff that seemed like it was there because of me, and made me wonder if maybe I breached a boundary or something. I don't know exactly, but there's definitely seems to be forces here that don't like you to prod around. And you can call those Agent Smiths or whatever you want to call them. Agent Smiths.
Absolutely. There are powerful forces that is holding us back. And when we talk about this holographic program that we are inside of, let me run an analogy by you real quick.
Okay.
I'm a hypnotist, and if I put you in a soft chair and talk to you for about 10 to 15 minutes, and I tell you that when I wake you up, when I snap my finger and wake you up, you will see an elephant standing next to you in the room. And I don't care if you're on the 13th floor of an apartment building, you will see that elephant. So I snap my finger, bring you back out, and you look over and you see that elephant. You can reach out and touch the snout on him. You can feel the rough skin in your hand. You can smell him. You can hear him breathing. That elephant is 104% real to you. He's right there. There is a problem though. I can't see the elephant because there's no elephant there. But to you, that elephant is perfectly real. You can feel him.
Yes.
So now, what happened? Did your real world go away? Yes, it did. So what is the difference between that world with the elephant in it and the one you're sitting in right now, touching the computer? You can feel it. It is solid. What is the difference? Nothing. It's the same thing to you. You created a new holographic program around you with your mind, because I suggested to your subconscious, when you were so deep that you couldn't even hear me, my voice went straight into long-term memory and reprogrammed your subconscious mind to believe there was an elephant there. And when you woke up, that memory came right out. Oh, the elephant. There it is. That's the same thing with the program that you are living right now. It is mind created. The universal mind has the master plan, and through your mind you are creating the details around the master plan in your existence. And this is one of the things I'm explaining very well in that book I just showed you. So we are all in some form of a simulation, and that goes right back to your original question.
Definitely. And I don't think I've ever been abducted by aliens or anything, but I've seen craft over my house low, and it makes you wonder, well, what if I have? And I don't know, but I don't really know. I don't think I have. I think maybe they've worked with me astrally or something, but I don't think I've ever been, taken or anything. If so, they mind wipe me and I don't remember a damn thing, if that's what happened, for sure. But I know there's been hypnosis cases and stuff with John Mack and all those different people, Bud Hopkins. There's a lot of stuff on that too out there.
Have you tried hypnosis?
I never have. My fiance wants me to hypnotize her, and I don't know how. I've read some stuff about it, and because she has some trauma from some past people and stuff like that. So we have an interest in it and would like to learn more about it, but I'm very cautious about doing something like that,
You should. You really should, because if you've seen UFOs above your house, why do you think they were there? They were there for some interaction with you, otherwise you wouldn't have seen them.
Yes.
You don't know how deeply that interaction goes.
Really?
Have you, when you look at you feel around your body, do you feel any lumps anywhere that shouldn't be there, or?
No. I mean, no, not that I know of. No. I'm in a situation now that's been kind of strange, where I live with my fiance Christina, and we take care of her mother and her grandmother, and her grandmother has dementia and is going through hospice and transitioning and stuff, and we both kind of attract stuff. But there's just a lot of weird stuff when you're living with someone that has dementia that affects you. Like, I'm not normally someone that talks about health stuff bad every day, but it's like there's a new thing with my body every day lately. My back, my foot, my headache. But we had something weird happen here with a glass blow up on the counter. No one was near it, a crystal glass. And there's also, when you stand at the bar, you get goosebumps really bad no matter what you do. A lot of itching in the ear. If you scratch it, don't, because it'll drive you crazy for a while. It's like there's things here. And I've talked to other guests, and I know the death experience can bring on a lot of different things. But there's definitely weird stuff going on here that may be ghost related. I'm more into UFOs and stuff. Ghosts are okay, but I've always found them kind of boring. But there is weird stuff here like that I've been having to deal with. But no lumps or anything, but there may be more stuff in there, like you say, that could be, brought up from hypnosis. I'm not denying that that's a possibility, for sure.
Well, the thing is that you probably will never know that you had an implant. Did you happen to know when they dug up Napoleon Bonaparte over in France, they dug up his body and they x-rayed it, they found a chip in there looking like, actually it was fairly long, it was almost a centimeter long, sharp at both ends, and it had ribs on it in his brain.
Wow, I didn't know that. I know we recently read a weird story about his genitalia. We don't have to get into that. Was really weird. I know not too long ago me and her looked it up. But yeah, I haven't heard that. I'll have to look it up. Apparently someone stole a body part from him and it got weird. And that's all. Yeah. That's a whole nother show. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. There may be something, I do believe trauma brings on these experiences. I lost a testicle to testicular cancer, and then my dad died, and I would say it was a shamanic death for sure. And that's why I think I have some of these gifts, that like suffering gives you gifts apparently in this world, which is good. It could just give you pain. So it's good that there's gifts with it for sure.
Well, the other thing is that when you have somebody there going through hospice, likely that they will pass. Nobody ever dies alone. There's somebody there for her and just watching and guiding her. She may start seeing them already, and they're there for her purpose, and you just happen to feel and see some of that.
I believe it. I definitely do. And I've never seen a glass blow up, but that thing blew up into pieces everywhere. It was not hot then cold. It's a thick crystal glass, and it just blew up. No one was near it. I'll never forget it. I started getting paranoid, thinking they were shooting energy weapons at me or something, which who knows? But maybe it was a ghost that did it. I don't know. But I just know it blew up. I'll never forget it for sure.
Yeah, it gets interesting when you have situations like that around you. What you really should do is to do a journal and write it down so you don't forget some of the more important things. There may be small details that you look at later, and they become a very important point.
Yes, I definitely will do that. And I'll look into hypnotizing more. If you have anyone you can recommend, like, I don't know, books or something, let me know. I know you know a lot about it. So, I mean, any advice for sure.
Yeah, I've been doing it for 50 years, but I tell you, I haven't done much with it lately. But my partner on the broadcast team Alpha Show, she is a hypnotherapist, and she's doing it every week, and she's good at it. And she does actually also something that I haven't heard anybody else do, and that is that taking people back in time to find out what happened even before you were born. That is not uncommon. You can do that with hypnosis, but she takes them forward, so they also can meet themselves. Now that gets interesting. So then when you get forward in time and the linear time catches up, then you already know what will happen. That's an interesting one. So you should talk to her about that.
Yeah, let me know her info, and I can get her on the show if she wants her, or whatever you're comfortable with, for sure. And the UFO thing, I haven't seen anything in a while, but nothing like my golden oldies. There were some big ones back in my younger days that you just don't ever forget. Now it's like you want to see them and don't, but sometimes I'll see some strange stuff. Like I've seen, my dog died. He died not too long ago, and Jack, and I was very upset and holding him outside crying, and saw a bright light appear in the sky really quick, and he stayed about a week more, and then he left. It was like something let him stay a little longer to say bye, and then he left. So there's been some things, but not the big like pyramid crafts that I've seen and other stuff like that back in the day. And I know those could be weird military stuff. There's all kinds of theories what some of those are, the big, triangles and stuff like that. Yeah. But that's one thing we've gotten to a lot on the show is UFOs. I've had Captain Robert Salas on. He wrote a book about UFOs shutting down the silos. He's still enlisted. Stanton Friedman, God rest his soul, I've interviewed him. But that's a big subject that we've gotten into on the show since. And mostly it was just because I was trying to figure out, what the hell's going on? Why was I seeing this stuff? So 13 years, it's the 13th year. And here we are still kicking.
Here's a good one for you. I can tell you how you can see, and everybody can see UFOs just about every time they go outside.
Okay.
There's a way to do that. Do it at night and get your hands on a 4th generation night vision goggles. Point them into the sky and sit there for a while. And there is almost like there's a traffic jam up there with things going back and forth. Round crafts, long cigars, and the triangular ones and goofy looking ones. They're all up there. In fact, George Norrie did a show on this once because somebody had a piece of those 4th generation night vision goggles when he was at a function somewhere, and they let him look in it. And he saw them, and it blew him away. So he did a whole show on what he saw. And this is something, they're a little bit expensive. I've seen those goggles down to $800 on auction sites, but otherwise they're a little more. But if you have those, you will see them just about every time you go out there. And
I would
another
like to
thing,
get some.
yeah.
I've
Another
definitely
thing,
attest to that too. Yeah, I've witnessed through those goggles, and actually, I think I might have even been at the event that Nori experienced that at, because Ed Grimsley used to go around to the different conventions and have the equipment. And yeah, no, it's amazing. Like, and you can clearly tell the difference between an airplane and then what looks to be a Klingon cruiser. You don't know what I mean. It doesn't. There's no other explanation for some of these things. Or, so yeah, I totally agree and could attest to that fact you just mentioned there.
see, the thing is that in England, it is illegal to sell these. Why do you think that is? Because it's military technology. They had these over in the Middle East when they were, warring at the worst over there, and they were given to the officers and some of the soldiers on special missions. They were given these, and they came back with all kinds of complaints that says, we see people, and when we take off their goggles, they're not there anymore. We see animals, we see things flying around, and we take them off, they're not there anymore. So they had all kinds of complaints about that. So they took them away from the soldiers, and they removed them except for the higher ranking officers, which was probably explained what this is. But that's why they won't sell it in England, because they don't want people to know that we are not alone. Australia, I don't think you can buy them. And other countries that has banned it because they don't want people to know.
I definitely want some, but they're definitely expensive. I'll definitely look into them more. I know a buddy of mine, there's a documentary, Curse of the Man That Sees UFOs, and Christo Rupolo, a friend of mine, he has a way to see those UFOs during the day and get some crazy footage. I don't know how he does it, some kind of filter or something weird, but it's similar to night vision, but it's during the day somehow. But he's the Curse of the Man Who Sees UFOs. He has some great footage in that's amazing. But yeah, I've heard different things about night vision, and I've looked into night vision to buy it, but I need to find some affordable night vision for sure. It gets expensive. Yeah. It's definitely fascinating.
Yeah, and there is, I flew for 23 years, and a lot of the flights were at night. You see stuff that shouldn't be there. I had one fly right underneath my airplane at about a 45-degree angle, and about 400 foot below my airplane one time. It just came from the right, about 230 or so, went straight underneath the airplane on the other side. It was kind of big. It was probably about 40 feet wide, something like that. And another time I was flying through from Omaha down to the burn center in Houston. And I was going through in and out of the clouds over Kansas, and I could see this black cigar coming out of the left corner of my eye, and went straight in front of the airplane, very fast. It took about 2 seconds from the time I saw it on the left until it was gone on the right. It was so fast I couldn't really focus on it, and that thing was probably about 3 to 4 miles ahead of me, which is pretty doggone close when you're up around, 20-some thousand feet. And I looked at the co-pilot. He looked at me, and I asked him, "Did you see that?" He didn't say a thing. He just looked straight forward. So I asked him one more time, and no answer. And after we got on the ground, I may have brought it up again, and I don't think I got an answer from him. And later on, I found out he was a born-again Christian. That explains why he didn't want to talk about it, because to them, these things are demons. So that was the devil out there flying around. But that was right there, straight in front of us.
Wow.
Well, they're definitely heating up with the UFO topic. I mean, they're freaking out on Fox News. I don't watch Fox News, but I've seen some of the videos. I don't try to watch any news stuff, but I know when I look up UFO on the news, like different CNN UFOs, Fox UFOs, just to see for fun, they're freaking out on there on Fox News about them. UFOs, It's funny, actually, but it's definitely been a hot topic lately, for sure. No doubt about it.
And we can also ask ourselves, Where do they come from? I think they're coming from absolutely everywhere. We make them, the Russians make them, probably the Chinese makes them. I'm quite sure they do. I know in England they're making a few because they got the technologies from the American that stole it from the Germans when we are told we won the war. And the German flying saucers was further developed in the United States, and they were given to the Brits, and the Russians got one craft that they brought back to Russia from Germany. So we have been developing this for over 70
Long time.
years. So yeah, that's alive and well, and then they come from probably other planets and other galaxies, interdimensional. There is an FBI document that says most of the flying saucers are interdimensional craft coming from parallel universes, and that dates back since 1960s, I think. They knew it all the way back then.
Battle for Los Angeles. I looked that up recently because I hadn't seen much about it in a long time, but that was weird. That was strange. And they were firing all at that thing in the sky back then. That was a long time ago. The Battle for Los Angeles or whatever it was, that big craft that was in the sky. I'm not sure what it was exactly, but they were firing on it. It didn't seem to react at all, whatever it was. Yep. That's an interesting story.
Absolutely. And then we have others that come from the future coming back here to observe and maybe poke us in the right direction to avoid annihilation. I'm not sure what their agenda is. But the thing, when you start talking about time travel, that gets really out there. But the thing about it is that I have read 6 or 7 different scientific papers that says, yes, we know how to make a time travel device. We just don't have the power to fuel it. Well, we do have the power to fuel it. They are excluding one particular energy source, and that is the mind. I have a time travel device or a small electronic device that I've had some very strange experiences with. And in fact, I have photographic evidence on our website of some things that I have done. 2 pictures next to each other, and they're totally different, but they're taken at the same time from 2 different timelines. But the thing about it is that even Ben Rich, the head of the Lockheed Skunk Work, he said, oh gosh, I think I can remember that, and he said, if you can imagine it, we know how to do it, or something to that effect. We know how to take ET home, and it will not take a lifetime to do it. If you can imagine it, we already know how to do it. And that's as far ahead as they are. So, and then we have this, this is a cute story actually. There was a stock trader in New York in 2003 that was arrested for insiders trading. He started with $800. And that's the day he started. A few weeks later, he had $350 million in his account. The Securities and Exchange Commission that is overseeing unusual things, they found that and they said, oh, wait a minute, that guy's got to have some special information, insiders trading. So they questioned him, and he said, no, this is what I did. So they trumped up charges, and they arrested him, took him to court, and he said, well, okay, since you ask, I'm a time traveler. I'm here from the year 2352 or something like that. And he said, I've been studying history. I know what stocks sold at an enormous profit. So he went back and he got caught up in the moment, and he started making money, and he had so much fun that he didn't stop. So they arrested him. And of course, they didn't believe him. They locked him up, and then he went to court, and he promised to come back to court. They let him go, and of course he never showed up anywhere ever since. The trick is that he had no fingerprint on record, no social security number. He did not exist anywhere. His name or nothing showed up in the records up to his age of about 32, 33. That guy shouldn't exist, but he did.
Interesting.
And that gets, you can read about this, bbcnews.com, July 11, 2018. They write about that, and also how to create the time travel device. This guy, he did 126 high-risk trades and never lost $1 on either one of them. So something happened there.
Definitely. So I know you've gotten into things from NASA and space and things about what they're doing. I mean, on a level of naiveness, they definitely are doing so much stuff that we couldn't even you probably could, but imagine what they're doing. I mean, what kind of level is it on? Do they have buildings on the moon, you think? Do you think they've got Mars, like breakaway situations and stuff like that, or civilizations and stuff like that?
There is a breakaway situation, and that already started back with the Nazi Germans. They broke away their civilization and moved to Antarctica and South America, where they have bases at both places. Hitler was taken to South America because they didn't want him in Antarctica, which was the main base at base 211. And that, of course, is developed further. Adamski, he took pictures of the Honebu 2 German flying saucer, and he said they were from Venus. Well, yeah, sure, but that's what they told him. Of course, Adamski also said that they had a German accent, so what do you expect? But on the other hand, the breakaway situation that moved to the moon, that has been developed. There are a large amount of people on the moon, and there are other races on the moon. In fact, speaking of the moon, there is more science explaining why the moon is not there than the science explaining why it is there. Let me elaborate on this one for about 45 seconds, because it shouldn't be there. This moon is way too big, too close, and moves too fast in order to hold the orbit around the moon that it does. We know the size of Earth. We know the weight of Earth. We know the gravity that it is putting out. We know the size of the moon. We know the gravity the moon is putting out. And we know how big it is, how heavy it is. If you run that into a computer, the gravity of Earth is not able to hold that moon with its gravity in the close orbit that it is, if it is solid. It would be about almost 2 times further out than it could hold orbit if it is solid. But if the moon is hollow, it would be a lot lighter. It could stay in the orbit that it has. Scientists know this, but they don't want to talk about it, because that opens up another Pandora's box that they don't want to talk about, because they don't understand and they cannot explain why it would be hollow, assuming that it is a natural planet. But it is not. So now we're back to thinking the moon may be hollow. What's inside of it? An astral traveler can actually tell you. They can go there and they can have a look. This could be fun for people, actually. Nori and I, we are doing a mastermind session on Sundays where some tremendous minds are getting together and we create the future before we have to live it. In one of those, I did a class on astral travel, and you can go to broadcastteamalpha.com under classes, and you can actually take that class. on astral travel. It'll teach you how to do it. But not just that, it'll also teach you about the environment you step into, what to expect, how it works, where you can go, and what you might see when you get there. You can probably go to YouTube and watch those videos, 6-minute videos that's saying, I will teach you astral travel. Doing that for a while, you may be able to get out of the body, but you have no idea about the environment you step into, and it could be very scary if you don't understand it. So that's why I went into so deeply into what kind of environment and what you expect out there. But you can go to the moon, you can go pretty much anywhere. I would suggest not to go anywhere right away. Just get used to the local environment, because there are entities, there are people out there, there are things out there. Yes, things. Not everything is people and entities. There are things also. That is hard to explain. Then you have light beings and whatever other things that you may be able to communicate with. And that could turn very interesting. So have a look at that if you like. But if you go to the moon, I wonder if I could share screen, because I got some pictures that really would explain what's on the moon. Should I try? Oops, you're muted, Jeffrey.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I'm
I'll
here.
try that and then.
Sorry, dogs were making noises, so I put it on. But I was just gonna say, we can you can share screens. We can see it here, and it's on YouTube. And on the archives after the show, I'll send you that and the YouTube, the archive from SoundCloud and the YouTube, so you can share it with your audience or whatever.
Well, okay, maybe that will be, because the two, one is called the Moon Pictures, the other one is called the Mars Pictures. There's two video documentaries that Nori and I did, and it explains exactly in NASA prints, Russian Space Agency prints, and Chinese prints, what is on the moon and what is on Mars. Well, I don't think I have anything from China on Mars, but I got a lot of it from NASA. That some of it was intercepted by the time that a rover sent it back. It was intercepted before NASA got their hands on it and was able to either whitewash it or take it away or cover it up. So you see, actually, there is one gray alien standing 20 foot away from the rover, and it is totally clear you can see him. And that is a print that was intercepted before NASA got their hands on it. Maybe it was just, I could mention a few things of the things up there, and then people could actually watch the videos. That would be just as good. Or what do you think, Jeffrey? Oops, he is muted.
Yes. You can share it, and that'll be fine for sure. I know I'm familiar with Courtney Brown's work, his books, Cosmic Explorers, and I know he's been on Coast to Coast a lot. For some reason, he didn't answer me when I tried to get him on, but it happens. But as far as his books were really strange. It's like, here's this guy that works at Emory University, Atlanta, and he's putting out books about remote viewing lizard colonies on Earth. So those books are not to say that it's not true. I don't know, but it was pretty strange that this guy's still working and, a doctor and putting out these books about people remote viewing lizard, reptilian bases on the Earth and stuff like that. But those Cosmic Explorers, I have both of those books somewhere, but it's definitely fascinating. But yeah, you can share the links or show the pictures or whatever. It's on YouTube. So there's people in the chat room on YouTube that'll see it. And then we see it here, of course. And I can send you the archives after the show. But one thing that I've always wondered, I had Lynn Caston on before, and he gets into the Nazi weird stuff in Antarctica and all that stuff. What do you think's going on there? Is that true that it was Nazi related, or what do you think?
A lot of it is, but there's also 3 major, very large crafts that is hidden under the ice, and they found them. and they are investigating it. And when I say they, I don't know who they are, except for I know the Americans are down there, the Russians are down there, the Brits are down there, French is down there, and they're all working together. There is no political conflict when it comes to that one, because they found these beings down there. Some of them are 10, 12 foot tall, and they don't look like us. They are inside of these ships. So yeah, they're down there. But the Germans also have in the Neue Schwabenland, they have base 211 down there. There's almost 2 million Germans down there now. And the Germans admitted before the war that they have created a base, a Shangri-La for their Führer. And that's the one they were talking about.
Crazy.
And even back in Norway, when I grew up, we had newspaper articles about flying discs that they said there were drawings of them that the Germans have made. There were prisoners of war that came back that have seen these things, and they wrote about it. So we know they had flying discs. And Colonel Wendell Stevens I did 3 or 4 interviews with him here in Tucson on my TV shows. And he said that there were 163 known flying discs that was found, either physically, there was just a few, but the paperwork on it, they found that the Germans had made 163 of them. So they were mostly flown out, but some of them couldn't be flown, and they were caught at the end of the war, and they disappeared, but to the US, to Brits. I think the Brits got one, and one went to Russia.
So they're definitely pulling the curtain over our eyes, trying to act all excited, like what are they when they know, pretty much anyway. I know I saw that. I haven't watched it yet, but I know that Stephen Greer Cosmic Hoax documentary says that they know who they are already, and I haven't watched the whole thing, but I know I'm familiar with it for sure. But definitely pulling the curtain down.
They treat us like mushrooms.
Anything you'd like to add, Jerry, or ask?
Yeah, I mean, well, just one real quick, I totally agree in terms of taking caution and projecting to some of these locations, like you mentioned, the moon. Actually, I'm a natural-born lucid dreamer, astral projector, so I just didn't even realize that people didn't just wake up in the dream world every night until, like, I was almost a teenager. And then I realized, I'm like, oh, okay, people just don't do this all the time. And yeah, I just wanted to second that thought about being very cautious about where you project to. And yes, it's very true. You can do these things. They can be taught. I mean, for myself, it was a talent, but at the same time, it's like, yes, you can develop it. It's very cool. And now for yourself, is that have you developed your own ability to astral travel very much, or is that something that you pursue?
I do it, but I gotta say though, I'm not very good at it, because there are times when I try to do it, I can't get out. Other times I can get out, but I can't get out all the time. It's not a totally natural thing. I gotta put my mind in a state of mind where I could do it. And if it comes to going to the moon, you got to be a little careful, because there are entities out there that live in the astral world. They can see you, and they may not like you coming there spying on them. So get in and get out. There is one crater in I got a picture of it, actually. Let me just read some of the pictures that you will find on the Mars pictures and the moon pictures. Here is one on the moon pictures. There's a 2-mile-long cigar-shaped craft floating across the surface of the moon, throwing a shadow on the ground. It's clear as a bell. It cannot even be argued with. And how do I know that one is accurate and real? Well, it's because I wrote to NASA and I got the print. So I got it. There's another one that showed 2 pyramids sitting on the moon. How do I know that's real? I wrote to NASA and got it. So then there are another print with 2 huge water tanks that is almost, I say water tank, I don't know what's in it, but it's almost a half a mile tall. These are straight up, solid, and slightly curved top, and then straight down and round. We don't want to know what that is. And then there's a cigar-shaped crashed craft that is so clear you can almost reach out and touch it. It's laying upside down because it has the cockpit on the upside. And these things doesn't have cockpit on the upside. It's on the underneath side. So it's laying there upside down. I also have a picture of a humanoid walking across the surface of the moon with no spacesuit on. And speaking of those pyramids, they don't build pyramids in spacesuits, do they? No, they don't. There's air up there. They're equivalent air to about somewhere between 16 to 20,000 feet of air, feet of altitude on Earth. And that is okay. People can adapt to that because in the Himalayas, there are people living full time at 18,000 feet of altitude. And all they have to do is to breathe a little deeper and they get the same amount of air. And then there are huge buildings, square buildings. Nature doesn't make square buildings. There is one crater that it's in the Schroeder crater. Go to Google Moon, find the Schroeder crater and have some fun. It is a swastika-looking building. It's got all the spikes in the swastika. That's the one building that the Germans found, and they fell in love with it, and they rebuilt some of them. And the German base is a part of the German base is inside of that one. But there was a very old stone building that they had to refurnish. I also see a hole in the moon that is 400 meters wide. That's about 1,200 feet wide. And I see a NASA print with green vegetation on it, on the moon. Actually, it's green color. I presume it is vegetation of some form. So that's the stuff you will find on the moon pictures at broadcastteamalpha.com. If you scroll down in the shows, you'll find that video documentary there. We have equivalent thing on the Mars pictures. I got pictures of trees on Mars, NASA prints. There's a floating rock floating across the surface. There are round buildings that is totally clear. There is no question of it is made out of metal. And there's two wheels with an axle in between it, laying on the surface. There's also a picture of a woman standing on the ledge. She got a long flowing dress and you can see her arms. And there's a man standing there leaning up against a rock. That is no question about it, it's a person standing there. The only trick is that person is somewhere between 1 foot to 2 foot tall. Now, then you think, oh yeah, sure. Well, I have no problem with that because in a fossilized, there was a fossilized skeleton found in Antarctica with a perfect human skeleton inside of a rock that was 11 inches long. You may have seen that. It was floating around on the internet for about 3 years ago and then disappeared. So that is already there. I see pictures of lakes up there. Another humanoid sitting on a rock just found in the Gigapan pictures. And there are several pictures with trees up there. This you will find on Broadcast Team Alpha under the Mars pictures, down in the stream for a while. You're going to have fun watching it this time.
Yeah. And what I find interesting is how so many different researchers have came to the same conclusions or have found similar evidence. So I've heard also too about the smaller humans that have where some of the tunnels that have been dug here on Earth, where they run into like these little miniature human bases or something too. I've heard these stories. And then kind of like what we were talking about before in terms of this pan-dimensional implications. It's like, if we're already seeing that on Earth, why wouldn't it exist on Venus, Mars, Mercury, everywhere else too? And I think that is overwhelming to a lot of people. So it's like, so those who may be listening to this and going like, oh, that's crazy. Well, think of it like a ghost picture, like you were mentioning with the third and fourth gen night vision of seeing these entities or these animals in this bandwidth, but you can't see them in the normal, visible spectrum. And so the same rule would apply on Mars and Moon, I would suspect. And so to me, it's not that outlandish to think that some of these advanced imaging systems have caught some weird stuff.
Yeah, and if you take those fourth generation night vision goggles and walk into the woods, you're going to see animals in front of you. Take them off and they're not there anymore. Are they animal ghosts, or are they interdimensional entities looking like our animals in a parallel universe? What do you guys think about that?
Sounds possible, probable, for sure.
Yeah.
The spirit world.
Or I give people the example on a practical level of like, how when a fly is in the room, but you can't see it, you can hear it because it's moving all ziggy-zaggy, and then you'll catch a glimpse of it like in one spot, and then it's ziggy-zaggy again. So to the fly, it's not seeing it; it's seeing us in a different way. It's like we can't see it, but it's obviously physical.
Yeah.
There's one thing, one of my weirdest experiences, and this is why I'm not going to rule anything out ever, is a lot. In Georgia, at one point, I was with a friend of mine, Brian, and we had been partying and doing weird stuff from a rave and stuff like that. So you can imagine, it was my younger days, but we were in the back of back of the house, looked in the woods, saw three little cloaked beings standing around a black box, and they were very small, maybe 1 or 2 foot, and we were like, do you see that? And he was like, do you see that? And we both saw it. And then a cat of mine, who I named after Marilyn Manson for some stupid reason, jumped at them and they vanished. And then later I found that cat dead from it got hit by a car. I don't know if they did it, probably just got hit by a car, I don't know. But those 3 little beings, they were there, and I couldn't see their faces. I don't know if they were grays. I don't know what they were. But I know Greer, I know there's people on the fence about him. I don't know him, so I can't judge. But I know he's had weird little beings in some of his documentaries, little ones. And I've wondered, is that what I saw, is that what was under those cloaks? And the biggest weird thing is that black box. I've always wondered what in the world that was, but those were definitely some kind of alien beings, or maybe fairy or wee folk, or I don't know what the hell they were, but I'll never forget them, that's for sure. So I don't rule out anything really after seeing that.
Yeah, and another thing too is that sometimes people see UFOs, flying discs, that is only about 4 foot, 5 feet, 6 feet from edge to edge. And then we look at that and say, gosh, that's too small to have anybody inside. That's got to be a drone. No, not necessarily. They may be really small people in there.
One time, my brother and I had something in our yard moving the trees. It was almost like a miniature helicopter you could not see, and you could hear it, and the trees were blowing, and nothing was there, and you couldn't see anything, but something was moving around and moving the trees like it would have been a helicopter. Maybe it was something under stealth, maybe alien, maybe a drone. I don't know, but it was definitely weird. So just to think those little beings may be in it too is even creepier for sure. No doubt about it.
I got a hint for you. Do you happen to have a friend that is a dentist?
No, not offhand, no.
Well, or a chiropractor. They have usually X-ray machines.
Okay.
If you find one, go and have them take an X-ray of both your hands, because often you can find chips in your hand. And also you can find it in your skull if they have a bigger X-ray machine. You had so much activity, I got a sneaky suspicion you have something.
Wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me for sure. And Jerry's had a lot of weird stuff too. Like he's had some stuff where he feels like he's been taken by some kind of agency or something. And I don't know that kind of, when I've interviewed Jerry, it creeped me out when I had that helicopter come over silently. It was like they sent out something because of the UFO stuff. But then he also has had stuff where, you know, some situations that are more intense than with that kind of stuff than me.
Oh.
Yeah, and I mean, I've come to grips with a lot of it and understand a lot of it a lot more now. But yeah, and I agree though. I think Jeff has some hidden nuggets of knowledge in him somewhere, because yeah, I just can't imagine that these beings would just go, "Hi, Jeff," and then not do anything. Just kind of from my own experience, even. So I do agree, and it would be an interesting hypnosis project. You know, maybe how you mentioned your co-host on your show. Might be even a fun episode, because I think it's an untapped paranormal experience with Jeff right now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's what worries me.
Well, it'll be good stuff though, because like how you were saying earlier, it's like it'll lead you more to like your actual story, your actual purpose, and then because now you know him, you can ask questions too about this. so don't be too afraid.
Yeah.
You know, all par for the course, relative to the show, of course.
Yeah, you guys have had some excellent experiences, and I guess, you know, it's simple for you to believe that there is something more, because there's a saying out there saying something similar as, for the one who has had the experience, no explanation is needed. For the one who have not had the experience, no explanation is possible.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yes. For sure, no doubt about it. And you know, I guess when I've seen those beings of light, it was kind of like the universe showing me that there's more to this. You know, because I was always freaking out about death and fearful of it. I still don't like it, but at least it's when you see something like that, it says, well, at least we probably carry on. Chances are that's a pretty, you know, that's a good point there, that we carry on. Our energy's infinite, and by seeing that helped me, even though I still think death sucks. But but as far as you're concerned, what is the death experience after? Are we beings of light? What do you think we are? I mean, I've heard different things, like we're energies, orbs. Like I can't imagine that we're just like these little balls of light that float around when we die. That's why it sucks so bad there as a ball of light. That's why we come here, I guess. I've heard so many different things, but I mean, what's your take on? I know that's a big question, the death experience.
Well, that goes back to the one I mentioned earlier about what are we? Not who we are, but what are we? That ties in with who we are, because most of the people have said, well, I was a pilot and I'm an attorney, I'm a ditch digger. We identify ourselves with what we do, and that's not the way to do it. We are, as spiritual being, have created this physical existence, including our body, for the purpose of that spiritual being having physical experiences. Because a spiritual being does not have a physical body, so it cannot have physical experiences. But it wants the experience, so it creates the body. And that is an old habit, so to speak, of that spiritual world, because it needs to develop with more and more and more spiritual capacity. And it gets that through physical experiences, up to the point where we no longer need the physical experiences. Then we just drop the body and it just, you know, goes away. But we are, let me back up just a little bit. We are part of the universal mind. Some people call it God, some people call it other things. And we are a sparkle life given a perception of individuality from that universal mind that will have a separate recording of all and everything it does in physical existence. So when it leaves, it takes that recording with it back to the hive, so to speak, and it can share it with the universal mind. Now, there are some that is not able to do that. We call them ghosts because they haven't found their way home. They can hang around for hundreds of years. Go to the fields on the east coast of the United States during the Revolutionary War. There are people there that is walking around with their gun on their shoulder. They show up on pictures, but they're not there physically. They were so traumatized and attached to that location, they missed their opportunity to go home. And there is many, many instances of that in society. We can see and we can hear and we can observe these ghosts. That's where astral traveler and spiritual mediums can communicate with them and tell them, look here, you're not supposed to be here. This is not your home. Go find the light and go home. And or there's another way for those that is out there trying to do this, a disembodied spirit that haven't found their way home. Think of someone that they love and ask them to come and get them. That could be their mom or some other relative that they really feel a lot for. Ask them to come and get them, and they would very likely hear the telephone call and come and get them and tell them, okay, you're ready now, let's go home. That seems to work. I've used that, actually not often, a couple of times maybe.
And when it comes to, yeah, it's definitely, we had someone on last week, June Lundgren, who got into some stuff with the stuff that I'm going on here. But she uses Archangel Uriel and Michael to do a lot of stuff and makes this black salt that helps protect you and stuff. But she definitely, I'll have to send it to you. It was definitely interesting. But she got into some afterlife stuff, but mostly just got into some of the stuff like that there were some negative beings hanging around here because of the death situation, and that some of those beings will try to take that energy of ours, and then the light ones will come and protect it and take it to where it needs to go. But it definitely got weird, but an interesting show. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you about, two different things, and we can just do it a little bit at a time. Or I know that Skinwalker Ranch show. I know have you seen that show? And I know you're familiar with Skinwalker Ranch, right?
Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious, from your intelligence level, what do you think's going on there? A lot of people seem to think it's a vortex or something like that. What do you think?
Well, I have not seen the movie on that, but I got a friend that spent several years up there on the range, and it appears as there is a portal. They're able to come through from probably a lower vibration into ours. And there's also underground bases in that area, which there are ETs, the Greys are in there working with the dark side of the government. So I think you have both things at that place. And there are people that take cameras in there and take some really goofy pictures. So there is definitely something going on. And I think a lot of them are able to catch that on camera. And then, of course, they may not share it with anybody because they're accused half the time of, oh yeah, sure, you faked that.
And then, of course, you have the Bigelow space hoarder situation where he went in there and bought it up and studied it and then didn't tell us nothing. Jacques Vallée, which hopefully I know I probably didn't say his name correctly, but the French ufologist went there. We don't know what happened because Bigelow, he's a space hoarder tyrant, and he didn't tell us pretty much anything. But then he sold it to this other guy. I forget the dude's name, Brandon something, but that show is based on that. But if you get a chance to watch the show on the History Channel, just watch it for the amusement circus of it, because it is crazy as hell. So they're getting radiation burns there, wounds, and some reason they named a computer Satan, which is probably stupid. they're now, the government's coming back there trying to work with them. Like, there's heavy interest in it. But that show is probably one of the craziest shows that I've seen on the paranormal. They went to the emergency room. They're getting radiation burns, and there's just stuff. I haven't seen the second season yet, but the first season was pretty good. And I know there's a documentary by Jeremy Corbell, that Hunt for the Skinwalker. That's really good. And of course, the book with George Knapp and all that. That's where I first learned about it, is that book with George Knapp. But it's definitely crazy. But that show is definitely worth watching. I got to get into the second season. But the other thing, I've interviewed David Paulides quite a few times, and I know he's going through some more deals now. His son took his life. God rest his soul, and God bless him for going through that. I know that's a horrible thing, I'm sure, to go through. But with Missing 411, all these people are going missing in national parks.
Yeah.
And some of it may be weather or weird stuff, but a lot of it is really weird. Like, there's some weird stuff. Like, there are some cases where it seems like people have been taken up in the sky and thrown down and their bones scattered. Like, there's just weird. The FBI get involved when they usually don't. Like, there's definitely some bizarre situations going there. And if you've heard of Missing 411, do you have any thoughts on that? What it could be? It sounds like it may be some parallel stuff, realities, or I don't know. It's just weird.
It is hard to say, but my impression of that is that it's more man-made than anything, because there's tens of thousands of people disappearing every year. Many of them are children and people in the woods that, some of them could be bear meat too, for all we know. But if so, there would be bones usually left behind. Some of them there would never seen or heard from ever since. I think maybe there may be some from the dark side of government or other people that has agendas here that abduct people, because in space the slave trade is very big. There are factories on the moon that is run by slaves. They got hundreds of slaves in buildings like this. They're abducted from Earth and brought to the moon, and they spend the rest of their life there working as slaves.
That's terrifying.
They get children from Earth, abduct children, take them to the moon, and they grow up there, and they spend the rest of their life working as slaves. This is alive and well. Ask any astral traveler. They could find these things, but like I said, get in and out, because you don't want to spend much time there.
Yeah, definitely. And I know when I interviewed David, I've interviewed him on the show, but I also interviewed him in written form, like questions written out for Examiner a long time ago. I had a specific question in there about Bigfoot. He pulled me aside in email and said he couldn't answer it, that he didn't want to bring that to the families because they'd laugh at him. But he also alluded that some of those cases may be like rogue, kind of cannibal, weird tribe kind of stuff. Not to say all Bigfoots are like that. I don't want to make a genocidal comment, but there may be some that may eat people, like from native legend and stuff. So he kind of alluded that there's definitely something to that. And I think it's a bunch of different stuff, but definitely could be some black ops, weird, crazy crap too, for sure. But I know from his response in email, there's definitely something about a weird Bigfoot too, doing weird stuff out there from what I saw. He has some pretty fascinating books on Bigfoot too, in Pacific Northwest and stuff like that, native legends and stuff. That's a fascinating subject as well. What's more fascinating about Bigfoot, I've had Stan Gordon on, when you start mixing up UFOs and Bigfoot, that's when it gets really crazy as hell. But I love it, for sure.
Yeah.
Wookiees.
Yeah, the big Wookiees. But some of the Bigfoots, though, they're said to be about 12 foot tall, and some of them are more like maybe a little tall human, 6-7 foot. So there's different size of them.
Nephilim, maybe.
Yeah. And then Bigfoot is one, and then we have the Yeti, we have the abdominal snowman, and in the Himalayas, and there are different names for them. Even down in Florida, the skunk ape that is supposed to look more like human than an ape, and there is different kinds, and there are pictures of them. They do exist. It's just that it doesn't fit the agenda of the rulers to allow this to be commonly understood.
Yeah, I've heard stories that they cover it up at parks and stuff like that, national
Yeah.
parks, like they'll cover it up and things like that. And there's definitely seems like there's tribes of these things. I've had Ron Moorhead on. He did Quantum Bigfoot, that book, and he's had some audio that's just crazy. It sounds like some weird tribe that you'd see in a horror movie or something, but he's got some of them on audio talking, and it's just bizarre. It's like a weird,
Yeah.
like a native mutant tribe or something weird. I don't know what it is, but there's definitely some weird audio out there too, and footage, and some interesting footage for sure of those things. Definitely
Well,
fascinating.
They do have a language of sort. We can hear that from there are recordings of them kind of like snickering and just making sounds to each other. And for them, when they get together, they're going to say something similar as, these humans are really strange people. I bet they have some form of a language of sort.
And then when you look at native folklore and stuff, that gets real fascinating. I mean, they have stories of the hairy man hanging out with coyote and the weird giant stowing you in a basket with spikes and eating you. So they definitely have some written stuff in their folklore about this crazy stuff for sure.
Mm-hmm. I got one more thing that I would love to talk a little bit about, and it's kind of something that really would help people. What we have been talking about is extremely interesting, and it should open up the door in the back of our head saying that, hey, I want to get out of here. I want to find more of this stuff. But there is one thing that is very important, especially for those of us that is a little more chronologically advanced in age. The rumor on the street is that I'm 75 years old, and I think my mom was lying to me about that, though. I don't believe that for a moment. But did you know that in 2009, there were 3 doctors that got the Nobel Prize for discovering an enzyme that reverses the aging process?
No, I didn't.
That is something that, don't take my word for it. Go to the Nobel Committee's website, scroll down to 2009, scroll down again to medical submissions, and read the paper. You're going to love it.
Check it out.
Yeah, because I am doing that, and I am reversing my aging process. 5-7 years ago, I started to look a little ragged. A few more, I think they call them crow's feet. And I had some gray hair. No gray hair anymore to speak of. And the wrinkles are going away. And I work 12, 16 hours a day, but I have more energy than anybody I know. This enzyme is called telomerase. And I am doing what a guy that I found, he died from an accident at 256 years old, and the government verified his age.
Wow.
So I'm doing the same thing. And
I'll have to ask you about that and send me some links, or I'll look it up for sure.
Just for the fun of it, Google the 256-year-old man, and you're going to have a lot of fun reading. And that is, his name was Li Xingyuan. He was martial art instructor for the Chinese army for as long as anybody could remember. He was born back in the late 1600s. He had 23 wives and over 300 people in his family, like children and grandchildren and grandchildren. Now, science has figured out why we get old and die. And that's just plain and simple, because the shortening of the telomeres at the end of the chromosomes inside of our cells. When the telomeres that hold the chromosomes together get so short, there's nothing there anymore. The end of the chromosomes start fraying, and the cells can no longer replicate themselves, and you get stuck with old cells in the body, and you get old and you die. Now, That's a common thing. I think pretty much everybody does that because they don't know how to reverse it. I am doing, oh, should I back up? There is a pharmaceutical called TA-65 that is supposed to be able to help the body create its own telomerase enzyme to reverse the aging by lengthening the telomeres. I've studied that. Some people say, yeah, it feels good. Other people say it didn't do nothing for me. I'm doing it the cheap way because TA-65 will set you back about $400 a month. I'm doing it the cheap way. It'll cost me maybe $50 a month. I'm taking the herbs that will help my body create that enzyme enough to lengthen the telomeres inside the cells. And this is one of the things that I write very, very deeply about in this book about spiritual science, higher conscious thinking, and how to access the universal consciousness. I explain in there how to do what I do, and there are certain herbals that will help you do that. And astragalus is one of them, and there's medical research showing that astragalus taken in the high doses will reverse the aging process. There's medical research showing that. There's also other herbs that contribute to the same thing. And jiaogulan herb is another one. In China, that is called the immortality herb. When you take those two and pepper, black pepper, in combination, it magnifies the effect of the herbs, so the astragalus and the herbs. So it will actually stop the shortening of the telomeres and even lengthening them. And if you go to Broadcasting Alpha, go down in the stream of shows, I have 2 places in there where I speak about what I do, and then in the book you will get a lot more information about it. And this is something that older people really should think about, because one thing that happened is that once you start reversing the aging process, all age-related diseases go away. Now that's big.
Definitely. What was the cheaper herb? I'm writing all this stuff down. I'm trying to take notes, but for some reason I how do you spell the cheaper one that you take with black pepper?
Oh yeah, astragalus.
I got that one.
Herb, and then the Chinese immortality herb is called jiaogulan. Gosh, I don't speak Chinese, so I got to spell that one for you.
Jiaogulan.
Yeah. Jiaogulan. Herb.
Got it.
And then
I'll grab your book too and learn more for sure.
Okay, and then if you take black pepper with it, it would magnify the effects of astragalus, which is the most important one. Okay. And then, of course, I take other stuff too. I take ginseng and, you know, a bunch of stuff. Goji berries like it was candy and stuff like that.
I'm 46 and been through hell lately with the hospice stuff and all that. But my stuff's turning white. Like I shaved all this off recently. It was all white. Now it's a little brown because it's growing back, but it's probably going to turn back white. So I need the supplements, I think.
Well, there's another thing that you can do. This will do it in the long run. But gray hair or white hair is a function of copper deficiency in the body and an acidic body. Go down to the pharmacy and get yourself a package of Lepner's paper, I think it is called, the pH paper. Test yourself. If you find that your pH value of the body is below 7, alkalize it. And then you make sure you get enough liquid, make it liquid. I'm taking the pills right now because I bought so much of it. I'm trying to use it up, and it's not the best, but it's colloidal that, and I'm taking, but make it ionic copper. That is the best. Ionic copper, and also baking soda will help you alkalize the body. I keep my alkalinity up to about 8. I fail at that quite often. It drops down every so often, but I also try to bring it back up again to 8. And I'm 75, don't have much for gray hair. Actually, I got a little bit right here at the ears, but otherwise I don't see much. And I've never really been sick in my life either, except for some really bad hangovers, and those I earned very well.
It happens for sure. I know it's kind of fascinating. They have medicinal pot here, so we do that. Me and Christina vapes and everything. But I know THC has been said that it helps you live longer. Like I saw some study, some old grandma that was puffing up all the time. She's lived like 110 or something. But I think there's something to that too with THC for sure. That I think it helps with that on some level. I don't know exactly the science, but there's something to it for sure.
Yeah, I had a shaman tell me the same thing one time.
Yeah.
So it could be something to it.
For sure. So we got about 4 minutes, and it's been a great show. I loved it so much. I'm glad I got in here. I was freaking out, and I was like, my blood pressure. I've been having some blood pressure stuff lately, but it's fine now. But I was freaking out about the headset. I'm just glad we got in here. Jerry was taking the reins, the ship, for sure. But it's been great, and my co-host Jay McNicholas really wanted to be here. He's usually here, but he had to work, so Jay set in. Thank God. But sometime he wants you to come on with him because he was originally the person that told me about you, and then I was like, well, I got him tonight. Sorry, you can't be there. So I said maybe in the future you could come on in the future when he's here. So that'd be cool.
Oh yeah, I'll come on. Just give me a call and I'll be there.
All right, that's awesome. I love it. I've loved the interview. Thank you so much. And who knows, you got telling us Fountain of Youth secrets. You know, I'm down here in Florida, so supposedly that's where the Ponce de Leon was looking for the Fountain of Youth or something weird like that. But drink from it. Take a drink from the Grail, no doubt about it. What's your website, or is there anything else you want to plug in your book?
Yeah, broadcastteamalpha.com. I also have a picture gallery in there with 5,000 unbelievable pictures of things that should not exist, but it does. And also we have our mastermind on Sunday when we do some incredible things with both meditation, and we create the mental bubble of things, how the future is going to be, and it seems to work that way. That you can send us an email if you want to be part of a mastermind group. Send us an email to themastermindconnection@gmail.com, and I'll get you some information about the mastermind, how it works, and also a link to come and join us. And of course, this one here will teach you how to do things with your mind, so what you normally would think would be impossible, including time travel. Because BBC television came over and did a TV documentary with me and Michio Kaku and several people talking about time travel. And I've had some experiences which I explain in there, and I talk about how you can actually do this. So this gets interesting.
Well, thank you so much. We really enjoyed it. Thanks, Jerry. And I don't know if y'all have seen Loki yet on the Disney Channel about the Norse god Loki, but it gets into some crazy time travel stuff and timelines and weird stuff like we were talking about. Like, it gets deep. And then there was this guy, this African-American actor that's really good. He's playing Kane the Conqueror, who's like made this artificial reality to keep everything in line, to keep the variants from going to war. But it gets really wild. It's really good. Plus, I always love Norse stuff. It's always fun. So I try to do shows on that. But that show's really good.
We could do a show sometime on time travel, and I'll demonstrate the time travel device to you.
Awesome. Awesome, for sure. The flex capacitor, doctor. All right. I appreciate it so much. Thanks. And say your name one time for me, because I want to make sure. Aage Nost? Aage Nost?
Aage Here in the United States, it's Aage, last name Nost, N-O-S-T.
Aage
Yeah.
Nost. I'm from Georgia, so I just got to make sure I don't screw it up. I got it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a good weekend. I'll definitely be in touch. Thank you.
Yeah, send me a link.
Will do. Will do. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jerry. Thanks, Joe. I got this Logitech headset. I'm going to try to get one of those Yeti things when I get paid in August, so it'll be better. But hopefully I can get my other one working. I don't know what happened. I updated it. It's this headset, and that's why it went crazy. But right now, luckily, Christina had a Logitech headset, so that it's working. So, but I want to get I want to get one of those Yetis because I like the name, a Yeti microphone. Just
Live
for the
long,
Yeti name.
long and prosper.
All right. Take care. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend. And watch Loki if you can. It's good. Take care. Good night.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Good.
All right, everybody. It's time for you to get out and nominate for your favorite podcast. There are 4 amazing shows I want you to consider for the People's Choice Podcast Awards, the longest-running premier awards event in the podcasting space, open to shows worldwide. You can vote at podcastawards.com and nominate the following shows. All right, everybody, it's time for you to get out and nominate for your favorite podcast. There are 4 amazing shows I want you to consider for the People's Choice Podcast Awards, the longest-running premier awards event in the podcasting space, open to shows worldwide. You can vote at podcastawards.com and nominate the following shows. Writers and Illustrators of the Future podcast in the categories of education and storyteller drama. This show is based on the world-famous Writers of the Future contest created in 1983 by L. Ron Hubbard and provides writing tips and art advice from contest judges, winners, and industry professionals for writers and artists wanting to take their next step, along with the needed inspiration to keep on going. Next one, The Centralist in the category of politics. All right, everybody, it's time for you to get out and nominate for your favorite podcast. There are 4 amazing shows I want you to consider for the People's Choice Podcast Awards, the longest-running premier awards event in the podcasting space, open to shows worldwide. You can vote at podcastawards.com and nominate the following shows. Writers and Illustrators of the Future podcast in the categories of education and storyteller drama. This show is based on the world-famous Writers of the Future contest created in 1983 by L. Ron Hubbard and provides writing tips and art advice from contest judges, winners, and industry professionals for writers and artists wanting to take their next step, along with the needed. All right, everybody, it's time for you to get out and nominate for your favorite podcast. There are 4 amazing shows I want you to consider for the People's Choice Podcast Awards, the longest-running premier awards event in the podcasting space, open to shows worldwide. You can vote at podcastawards.com and nominate the following shows. Writers and Illustrators of the Future podcast in the category